But if I scroll out a little bit, what's this guy up here? Uh-oh, it's AI. So this is the alien now. Now, what's AI going to do? I'll tell you one thing. When I went to college, when I went to college, they didn't call it AI. This is what businesses have wanted. COBOL was marketed as a way to get rid of them darn developers. You can just write your specifications in the English language. Some companies now view software development as an asset. It makes their company stronger. It brings them value. Many companies look at us developers as overhead. We're just something you have to do. You just gotta clean the bathroom, gotta mow the yard. And I think that sometimes business folk, they wonder, can you just make it work? And if we have AI out there, oh, we can finally get rid of them darn developers. They stink, they ask hard questions, they take too long, they make me look stupid. All I want to do is I want to have some business goals and maybe make some money and profit. And well, the salespeople really drive it. The salespeople are going out and they're talking to folks and they go, what's wrong in your life? How can we fix it? How much are you willing to pay for that? Okay, cool. Salesperson finds out we can make a lot of money over here. And then they talk to one of their friends, a product person who understands the product. Sure, we can do that. And I'm not trying to be dismissive of the people. I'm really not. I'm being a little silly here. But the product people will say, well, here's the type of opportunities. If we built it this way, I've talked with the users, I found out how they want to do that. Can we just get that? I think all of us would love to talk to somebody and find they have a problem and then go, refresh your browser. How about that? Oh, yeah, but I don't understand what you mean here. Well, what would you like it to say? Well, if it said this, that would make more sense. Refresh your browser. How about that? Oh, yeah, I get that. That's the goal. If we could be so responsive that we could solve people's problems immediately and save them time and save them headache and save them money, they will pay us for that. And this might be what the future looks like. I might have to become a goat herder or a duck farmer, or maybe I just try to win the lottery so I can walk around and take pictures and try to find what the flowers are hiding from me. I could find a lot of joy in my life if that's all I was doing, if AI took my job. This might be the goal. And really, when people talk about AGI, they might think that this is what the goal is, that just takes over everything. But I don't think it's going to. Right now, I think we have a little of this, right? Right now, we've got tools that are helping us write our if statements and our for loops. And right now, maybe we have AI that's writing our tests for us. And maybe it's setting up our GitHub automations and it's doing code reviews. And maybe we've got AI on our servers that's watching how things operate. Okay. So if AI continues to grow, at what point does that become a problem for us? So let's say that AI does this. Cool. Somebody still has to answer what the heck is going on in there. And how do we figure out what the heck is going on in here from this side? Well, I typed a bunch of stuff into a prompt and it did it. Okay. Early in my career, I heard the quote, an expert is someone who knows all points of failure in a given realm. Not only do we know how things work, more importantly, we know how things break. Anybody ever see a null pointer exception? Anybody try to connect to a database that didn't exist anymore? Anybody have a web page that just broke on them or got hacked? There are so many points of failure, which is why we ask a lot of specific questions. So, as much as we would like to say that somebody can just come up with an idea, and we've seen a lot of demos where they make a brand new website and they go from zero to nothing very quickly. But what happens when you run it? What happens when that website runs and we get the OWASP top 25 security issues? That hasn't really changed that much since I had hair. SQL injection, HTML injection, cross-site scripting, all these silly little things that can still happen. That if I just tell AI, build me a March Madness bracket website, it can do that. But is it automatically going to do it away where if one of the servers crashes, that the other will just pick it up and reroute the traffic? Is it going to do it in a way where we're going to have logging and alerting? So if there is something wrong, we know where to look at it. If we think back to the item that I mentioned here, oh, that's a very bad granulated picture. If we think back again, how we communicate with people, and we think, what is the problem? What is the solution? How do we get there? Does this smell like test-driven development to anybody? Arrange, act, assert? What is my current context? What is the state of my application? My application has Xavier logged in and he is an admin. What does he want to do? He wants to delete Paul's access. Okay, admin named Xavier is logged in and he's going to do something, and then Paul's not going to have access anymore. Having that conversation to me is the same thing as TDD. It's the same thing here. Our acceptance tests are a way for us to understand what is the context. Xavier is logged in. What are we trying to do? Delete Paul's credentials. How do we know it's done? We run it and we see the results. Paul can't log in. If we have AI generating all of our tests because thinking about a problem is hard, thinking about where am I starting and where am I going, that's hard. Most people want to just write the code. But if I can think in that context, maybe I could generate all of this and not care. Maybe writing the code isn't the thing that I have to do anymore, but I still have to be responsible for what it does. So if I'm going to launch Copilot or Claude at night and say, I'm done with my feature, I wrote all the code, write all the tests for me, and I'll merge the PR in the morning. Okay, fine. Right? You have reached compliance. You have rules that say you have to have tests with all your code. I'm compliant, done. Well, when there's a problem and the system isn't working right, do those tests give you any clarity? Can you look at the test and go, what is it that we're actually trying to do here? This, I think, being able to think about that problem, I think that's a human thing that is probably going to be more valuable than writing code at some point in your career. We've made huge improvements in the last 2 decades already when it comes to deploying and running a site. My personal website is running on Jekyll with GitHub Pages. I commit code and it just updates the website. And I'm okay with that. But when I'm thinking about this here, if we go back to Xavier trying to remove Paul's permissions, a developer should be not thinking, how does this work? because maybe the manager comes in screaming, we got to get Paul out of here immediately. But we also have to be able to ask the question, are we sure Paul was ever even employed here? Did he ever even have access? How many Pauls have access? Do we just delete all the Pauls? This is where I think a lot of your training can be helpful because you have to be creative to say, if this is all AI generated and maybe it's optimized and it's storing everything in Chinese characters because they're much more context filled and we can save tokens and maybe we can't even read the code. Maybe AI gets so smart that it just puts everything in binary and we don't get to see it. We still have to be able to think, I am responsible for what this system does. I am responsible for how this system runs. Even though other people might be looking at different problems, this area is still something that somebody has to be responsible for. And you have to know all of these points of failures so you can say, yes, this is going to work.
That's really great. Yeah, that contextualizes AI, I think, in a way that makes me a lot more comfortable going forward because I sort of felt like I didn't know how much AI is gonna influence, this career path and feeling like, okay, if I'm still the one responsible for knowing like how this works, even if I'm not physically doing all the lines of code, that's still valuable and that's still important. So yeah, that helps a lot.
Good. And there's another thing to think about too. My friend Scott Sauber has been talking about Javon's paradox. Javon's paradox talks about in history how we would have constraints in one area that would cause other issues. Coal was expensive. You needed coal to make a steam engine. If they weren't making many steam engines because coal was so expensive. Then all of a sudden coal got cheaper, and then it was cheaper to make steam engines. But they got to the point where the price of coal went down, and then because it was cheap to use, the overall sale of it went up. That happened with the internet. I remember life before the internet. I remember when we first got the internet. I remember that we would, download a picture in the morning and hope that it would be there when we got back from class. Or download a song, when Napster first came out, and all of a sudden I could get a MP3. And then I remember having limits at my house. I could have 1 terabyte a month of downloads. So I thought I'm not going to just download all these MP3s and movies. And then all of a sudden those caps came off. And the amount of internet we use now, being that it's cheap and it's fast, has changed how we do things. If AI allows us to build more applications more quickly, they're still going to need developers to make sure that those applications are right. We think critically. We know how to break down very big problems into a series of true and false questions. There is still going to be a need for people who can understand that. And additionally, what may happen is you may be responsible for more applications in shorter periods of time. So, what do you do to be prepared for that? Maybe this is self-serving. Maybe I'm thinking about this to make myself feel good that my entire journey wasn't a waste. But I believe that the past hasn't gone anywhere. I've got books from decades ago when they talked about software patterns, software architectures. That is something that hasn't really changed. Maybe the AI takes the entire application. Maybe we get to control what the architecture is because we know I want to have these types of things over here and these types of things over there. And maybe we want to swap out our authorization from OAuth to OAuth 7 because that's a new thing. If we know how to design these applications, we know how to make sure that we can change them. If we understand design patterns, architectural patterns, coding patterns, those things will help us understand how to look at the problems again. Like we said, you learn one language, you recognize the patterns, you can apply that in different ones. Now you kind of look at applications. If you can recognize patterns for one application, you can kind of make sure that the new ones are built in a certain shape. So they'll tell you when they're not healthy. They'll limit the impacts if something goes bad. I call a microservice, it doesn't respond, the whole app crashes. Well, if I know that I've got a web page calling an API, calling another API, and I know that one of those things could go down for a minute, maybe I build retry logic in it to say, I'll ask you, and then I'll ask you again. And maybe I also happen to know about distributed denial of service attacks. So I know that if I keep asking you, Xavier, did you get it? Xavier, did you get it? Xavier, if I'm asking that, if the API keeps calling the other one repeatedly, that's going to crash it and cause another problem. So maybe you think about exponential roll-offs. I'll ask you real quick and then I'll wait a second. No response. I'll wait a little bit longer and maybe I'll try that 5 times. Like those types of fundamentals go across all languages. And I think that the way all these apps are being designed and built, the fundamentals that you can learn are much greater than just learning the syntax.
Very cool.
I got into that a little bit, but I think I did cover a lot of the overall things I wanted to that,
Yes.
hopefully gives you guys a little excitement, but also helps you go, I've got a lot of work to do.